furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio, radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I'm your host, Allison Tiemann, otherwise known as Typhon Blue, and with me today are my co-hosts, Stella Burton and Diana Davidson. Today's show is Anonymity for me, but not for thee, and we'll be covering the arguments for and against anonymity in rape trials. Before we get into the show topic, we have some business to take care of. As you may know, Honey Badger Radio has a new store. We have various Honey Badger-themed items and also designs using our rape culture mascot, Mr. Tentacles. In fact, Mr. Tentacles has gotten into the holiday spirit as Mr. Santacles. Mr. Santacles wants to be your secret Santa. Check him out at cafepress.com/honeybadgerbrigade. Thanks to Europa Phoenix for the design. We also have a show archive for those of you who want to hear past shows. You can find it on youtube.com/user/honeybadgerradio. Go and subscribe now. A note on the show sound. All of the hosts have good microphones. Aside from my craptastic internet connection, the reason why the sound is degraded is the Blog Talk system. The only way we can improve our sound is a studio setup. If you want to see our sound improve, or if you just enjoy the show, please consider donating. You can find a donation button on our YouTube page or on our website at honeybadgerbrigade.com. Next week, we'll be doing a show in which we present a top 10 naughty list and a top 10 nice list for the year. Please send in what you think is the most positive change you've seen for men's rights in 2013 for the nice list. And also, for the naughty list, send in those personages you believe represent the worst of feminist and gynocentric nastiness of 2013. Please send your selections to honeybadgersradio@gmail.com. Note the S. It's honeybadgers, plural, radio @gmail.com. honeybadgersradio@gmail.com. Finally, we were trolled last week by 4chan's My Little Pony board. Although it was quite an honor to get 4chan's attention, considering how much their trolling is hyped, we found it a little bit more of a cool spring breeze than a typhoon. If you guys want to troll us, if you guys, meaning 4chan, want to troll us in the future, here's a brief list of tips. 1. Don't use obvious troll names. Once one of you uses one, we usually can pick up on the fact that we're facing a troll brigade. 2, if you're going to use men's first names, use relatively uncommon ones. Seriously, we had 4 Jakes and 3 Johns. 3, in a show where we end up discussing the things we do, like how to properly use a plush toy as a marital aid, set the troll bar higher than shouting, "I want to have sex with Rainbow Dash's pussy."
Where's that damn My Little Pony porn of us you promised? I've been looking forward to it all week. Don't forget the extra tentacles.
Okay, Della. Seriously, 4chan, did you pull your punches? Did you make it easy for us? Did you, in fact, white knight us? Anyway, here's Della, hopefully composed with community news.
Please be sure to check out the announcement on the front page of A Voice for Men today. AVFM is hosting International Conference on Men's Issues. This conference will be in Detroit in late June 2014 and will feature Dr. Warren Farrell, Aaron Pitsey, Robert Franklin, Dr. Miles Gross, Barbara Kay, Carnell Smith, and Paul Elam. Looks like it'll be the big event of 2014 in men's advocacy. Also, in February of this year, after watching months of debate on the meaning of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control's National Intimate Partner in Sexual Violence Survey, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the raw numbers from the data from the year 2010. After waiting 8 months, they finally responded to my request with a PDF file. They also discussed with me how they think the data should be evaluated. As promised, I've published the file along with a description of that discussion and a few conclusions of my own regarding it on my blog, Breaking the Glasses. The title of the post, given the long wait for this information, is FOIA Update, Sorry for the Cliffhanger. I encourage anyone interested to take a look, read over the entry, my original request, and the data I was given.
And now on to the show. In early 2013, Emma Hall, leading a vigilante gang of 4, beat Luke Hardwood to death. And by beat, I mean she and her friends punched him, kicked him, stomped on his head till he had footprints on his skull, and then they dragged him off and killed him. After Emma and her gang had murdered Luke Harwood, they covered his body with a discarded mattress and planned to return to slice off his fingers and cut out his teeth. Luke Harwood had been falsely accused of rape by Emma Hall's sister, Alice Hall. In 2012, 16-year-old Dominique Scullion was walking down a street listening to music on his headphones when he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned around to see 41-year-old Paul Caulfield, who spat in his face, rendered him unconscious with a single punch, and beat his head into the ground, breaking Dominique's jaw. Witnesses claimed that they had tried to get Paul Caulfield to stop beating her to no avail. Dominique's relatives thought he had been hit by a car when they saw him lying in a pool of blood on the street. If you search Dominique Scullion's name, you can still see the pictures. The 15-year-old girl who accused him of rape remains anonymous. In 1955, Emmett Till whistled at a white woman named Carolyn Brandt. Carolyn Brandt proceeded to chase Emmett Till with a gun. Most likely, she later enlisted the aid of her husband and her brother to finish what she had started. They beat Emmett Till, gouged out one of his eyes, shot him in the head, and dumped him in a river, all because he whistled at a woman he shouldn't have. Each of these teenage boys has 2 things in common. They were falsely accused of some form of sexual assault, and they were all beaten because of the stigma of having been accused of sexual assault. 2 died. 1 lived. Likely Dominic only survived because he was beaten in a public street. If he had been beaten in seclusion like Emmett and Luke, he wouldn't be here today either. We give women who accuse men of rape anonymity. There is no other crime in which this occurs as a matter of course. We do this because feminists have us convinced that the stigma women face when they're alleged rape victims is so horrendous, so impossible to recover from, so life-changing, that women need anonymity to accuse. I think the stigma that killed Emmett and Luke and landed Dominique face down in a puddle of his own blood might be a wee bit life-changing too. So, anonymity in rape trials. I'm going to hand the mic over to Diana so she can tell us a bit more about the various arguments.
All right. Well, I've been researching this subject for the last few weeks, so I'm going to try and condense it. In discussing the specific treatment of sexual crimes in the criminal court system, we must deal with the specific issue that rape has become classified as a special crime, considered to be different from other types of violence, and has long been granted a different set of rules in court proceedings after hard lobbying by the feminists. The implemented rape shield laws that, among other things, grant lifelong anonymity to accusers were introduced into the law under the premise that trials re-victimize the victim and make it more difficult for victims to report the crimes committed against them. The granting of anonymity to accusers is problematic in that it can interfere with the defendant's ability to formulate a proper defense, and ultimately, unlike any other type of crime, it shifts the burden of proof onto the accused. There are 3 basic positions in regards to anonymity in rape trials. Anonymity only for the victim, note that the accuser is classified as a victim in advance. Anonymity for both the accuser and the accused, or removal of anonymity for both. These are the main positions. A quick overview of the arguments for each position runs as follows. Anonymity only for the victims is defended on the grounds that women should automatically be believed when they report a rape. Granting anonymity to the accused would somehow extend the suffering of the victim, and that publicizing the name of the accused helps to draw out other women who may have been previously victimized by the defendant. The shaming concerns of naming female victims is attached to the bizarre idea that people see women as damaged goods once they've had sex. Arguments to also grant anonymity to the accused they're best summarized in the single word, equality. What is true about the public shaming of rape victims is even more applicable to the public stigma of being accused of rape. We can't automatically assume the accuser is telling the truth, or we defeat the whole purpose of fair trials. Until convicted, every person accused of rape must be seen as innocent until proven guilty, and shielded from the court of public opinion as well. The third, less often heard position is that there should be no anonymity for either side. This argument is usually put forth by lawyers and is compelling. It's best summarized by the tenet that justice should not only be done, but should be seen to be done. This position holds that it is not the accuser who charges the defendant with rape, but it is the state. The public has a right to know who's being brought to court in their name and in whose defense. As rape is a criminal offense, it's a very serious matter wherein we're faced with incarcerating or removing the civil liberties of an individual within our society. And this is being done in our names. The need to protect the rights of all accused is inseparable from our need to protect our own civil liberties. Anyone can find themselves accused of a crime, and your position should reflect an understanding that you might yourself one day be sitting in the defendant's chair. When courts stop exercising the basic tenet of presumed innocence, shifting the burden of proof onto the accused, and corrupting equality before the law, we're not facing the mythical feminist rape culture anymore. We're facing the very real loss of civil liberty as a nation. The discussion about rape laws that privilege the accuser is silenced by the charge that we, as a society, hold misogynistic rape myths. But the discussion cannot be silenced. The concern is not one of privilege. It's a deep and serious matter that will ultimately determine whether or not we live in a free and just society.
Thanks, Diana. If you're listening and you want to call in, the number is 1-310-388-9709. That's 1-310-388-9709. If you have experience with a false accusation or an opinion about anonymity in rape trials, please do call in. And I'm going to drag Della to the floor here. Come on, Della. I know you have something to say.
You're going to drag me across the floor. Okay. Well, actually, I do. It actually goes back to one of the earlier statements on feminist arguments for anonymity for rape accusers. You know, the idea that a woman accusing a man of rape should have anonymity because of the damaged goods idea. This seems to me like they're perpetuating exactly the same thing that they've said in other areas that they're trying to prevent. If you have to hide the fact that you've been victimized or the claim that you've been victimized by someone who has done something horrible to you because you're going to be viewed as damaged goods, then feminists really haven't done much to fix the problem of the stigma. And if feminists are fighting to continue to hide the identities of women who are claiming to have been victimized, all they're really doing there is encouraging people to impose that stigma.
That's actually an argument that you'll hear a lot of people make, that the feminists are creating the very problem they claim to be fighting. By classifying rape as a special crime with all the stigma around it for the woman, they're creating this idea in women's heads that it should be something that they're afraid of or ashamed of talking about. There's a number of things that feminist changes to the law have actually done to damage or to create this perception in women's heads, including their quoting of this 6% rate of convictions for the accused, which is based on an outrageous method of calculating data where they look at the total numbers of reports and then calculate how many end up being incarcerated or convicted of the crime, instead of doing what other crimes do, which is base that calculation on the number of crimes that are brought to court, right? So you got this massive number of reports versus the smaller number that actually go to a court in the first place, and then how many get convicted. When you calculate it on the same level as the other crimes are calculated, the conviction rates are actually closer to 60%. They're like somewhere around 57, 58%. And there was a judge who actually was, it was the judge or if it was the Stern report, they were saying it was doing a disservice to women to tell them that it's only 6%, because it discourages women from reporting if they think there's such a small chance of it actually having a result. Whereas if they were to be honest and to give the real number of the 57, 58%, that it would actually help women who have actually had a crime committed against them, as well as bringing honesty to the discussion about conviction rates in regards to rape.
Yeah, it would definitely do that. I mean, I can't imagine what would discourage women from reporting rape more than telling women that the system is against you. I mean, I guess you could do more you could do what you do with male victims, which is essentially not just tell them that the system is against them, but actively show them that the system is against them. But what I wanted to point out is I think, and I know that this may be disagreed with, I actually think that the case for anonymity for the presumptively innocent man in a rape trial or a sexual abuse trial, there's a stronger case for granting men anonymity in that instance than there is for granting women as an accuser anonymity. And I think that the stronger case lies in the fact that the stigma is so much greater. I've never heard of a female rape victim or even a female false accuser getting beaten to death. And, I mean, if you just want to go from the ethical standpoint, the consequences of a false accusation are more severe. There is more stigma in society, but of course, feminists can't admit to the fact that there's a greater stigma against the men accused of rape than there is against female rape victims or female false rape accusers, because that would be admitting that rape culture is nonsense. I mean, because that wouldn't even make any sense. In a culture where rape was condoned, the stigma would be against women presuming that they were raped. You know, what kind of woman are you? How could you possibly say no to the holy phallus, that sort of thing. So I think that in order to admit to the fact that men really do face more stigma by being accused of rape than women do in accusing men of rape, I think what feminists lose that rape culture syllabus, however you say it, that club, that moral club they used to beat over people's heads, and it's really unfortunate.
On the topic of victim intimidation, I think feminists really are the greater guilty party there, because they do go through and give a dishonest representation of how the system's going to handle the case and how society is going to handle the case. If you look throughout society at just the stigma that an accused man faces is an example or is evidence of the fact that there is not as much of a stigma related to being or claiming to be a rape victim as feminists claim. There's support for people who claim to be, or at least women who claim to be rape victims. Now, you have not only got all of the programs out there that are specifically for women who are recovering from rape, but there's also the societal response. You know, news stories about, like you read, about people attacking accused rapists, where obviously it doesn't matter whether they were falsely accused or whether the accused actually committed the crime. The community response is the same. They do instantly believe the accuser, and they do respond to the accused as a criminal. But the other aspect of this is you were talking about incentive to provide the accused with anonymity, and there's also incentive to not provide accusers with anonymity, because in some cases there can be a serial false accuser, and it's not necessarily that I'm saying that's common, but it is a lot easier to get to the bottom of an accusation like that if there are other victims of the false accuser who can come forward with their cases.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, with a serial false accuser, there's even more. I think even more of a reason to do it, because they're using the system against men. They're using the system as a weapon against men. But what I also was going to point out is that vigilante justice, even, and I know this is a really unpopular opinion, but I believe that you share it, Della, even if the person actually did rape, vigilante justice is extrajudicial. And if we are a just and fair society, we should not allow it, even if the guy is a rapist, if he genuinely is a rapist. Because I don't want to be part of a society in which torture, beatings, and beating someone to death is considered an appropriate punishment for a crime. And it just boggles my mind.
Yeah, well, I think in regards to the discussion, excuse me, I got a cough for a second. In regards to the discussion about stigma attached to being accused or, confessing or telling people that you've been raped or whatever, it's all really just ultimately emotional rhetoric that confuses the legal issue and the legal rights of people who are faced with being charged with a crime or having to charge somebody else with a crime, whether or not it actually happened, right? It's as confusing to the issue as these falsified statistics that are being presented in order to try and sway public opinion on the matter. Ultimately, there's two different courts that go on. There's the legal court in the justice system, and there's the public court, which is what was mentioned in the cases that were brought up in the intro. So all of these guys that were assaulted, they hadn't even got to the point of being charged with something. This was all done in the court of public opinion via rumors, right? So if you think of it that way, in the vigilante justice aspect, then granting anonymity to the person accused isn't really going to solve that problem, right? Because anonymity is not actually some magical effect where nobody actually knows who it is. It's only a political aspect where papers aren't allowed to publish the name or the courts aren't allowed to publish the name, right? But it doesn't mean that nobody knows who they are. And the damage that's being done is most often being done in this public court of opinion. So at the same time we can discuss what should be done about the court system, I think that we need to equally and even more vehemently deal with this public opinion court that the feminists are controlling by naming, shaming, demanding, punishment for people before they've even been, taken to court for anything, let alone proven guilty. It's the public opinion thing that I think we should really be focusing on at the same time as looking at how the court systems are adjusting their laws to remove liberty.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that. I agree with that position that we do need to look at the court of public opinion as well as the legal courts. I think that one of the problems with the false rape accusations that I highlighted in the beginning of the show is, again, they never got to the police. They never got to the courts, so they wouldn't be included in false rape accusation statistics, which is like that. I mean, so when feminists say that, I guess they're relaxing their nonsense a bit and going from 2% to 8% of all rape claims are false. But when they say that doesn't include the false rape claims that happen in the court of community opinion. And the court of community opinion, its judgments, they can be pretty final. Dying in a pool of your own blood is a pretty final judgment of the court of public opinion. And so we should really look at the false rape statistic stats in that. And I don't even know how to begin to start looking at that particular type of false rape accusation. I suppose the closest would be the Stop Abusive and Violent Environment survey that they did, I believe, a year ago, in which they found that 10% of people either had a false accusation leveled against them or knew somebody who had a false accusation leveled against them, and 90% of those were men. But again, a lot of those false accusations happen in the court of public opinion, and we don't have any statistics on it, and I don't even think anybody counts it as a crime. And I think it should, because these accusations, they're precursors. You see it time and time again. They're precursors to deadly violence in many cases. I mean, there has to be some sort of way to prevent this and to look into it. And I wanted to say one more thing on false rape accusations and the rape. They are, even if you're not talking about false rape accusations in just social false rape accusations that never get to court, that never get to the police, they are really difficult to find out how many there are. The few studies that are done that have been, really well constructed, they have a small sample size, so you can't generalize, but those studies find really high rates. Like in the Canaan study, which is, and I'm going to address something about the counter arguments to the Canaan study in just a second. In the Canaan study, it was as high, it was 40%. And other studies have found even higher rates. With the Canaan study, the usual feminist counter argument is that they used polygraphs to find out the false accusers, and that's actually incorrect. They didn't use polygraphs to find the false accusers. They used polygraphs to confirm the false accusers that the police found by looking at the evidence. So that was a double confirmation. First, the police looked at the evidence and said, okay, these people are likely false accusers. The physical evidence is overwhelming. And then they looked at the polygraph to confirm that. And so it was just, that's the common feminist counter argument to Canaan, and I think that's mostly because they haven't read it. But again, they're really high. So this is something that's not a minor issue, and feminists will make it into a minor issue because they say that false rape accusations is such a small percentage of the total. It's not. And regardless, even if it is a small percentage, it destroys lives. And it's unfortunate that we aren't looking into it more.
One thing I wanted to point out really quick on this is part of the feminist argument, or part of the basis of the feminist argument that is really problematic, is that they use the presumption of guilt in their argument. Instead of presuming the accused innocent when they talk about rape allegations, if an accusation is not conclusively proved to be false, they want to consider it not a false accusation. They want to consider it a true accusation and the accused guilty. And that is exactly the reverse of our legal system. We don't look at a criminal allegation as in court or outside of court as a perpetrator and a victim. We look at a criminal allegation as an accuser and the accused. And that shouldn't change simply because of the nature of the allegation.
Right. There's an article by UK barrister Barbara Hewson where it's called Believe the Victim, A Recipe for Injustice. And she has a list that was put together by a U.S. sociologist named Joel Best, identifying 7 widely accepted propositions, which, when you put them together, create the powerful ideology of feminist rhetoric about rape crimes. One is believing victimization is widespread, and this is where feminists have so much fun coming up with their outrageous statistics, like women get raped every 2 minutes in the United States, or how many seconds. They'll break it down to 122 seconds, I think it is. But this perpetuation of the idea that it happens all the time and everywhere, and to at least half the women in the world, every 2 minutes would imply more than half. The second premise is that its consequences are fundamentally psychological and long-lasting. This is their telling women that if they're raped, they'll probably never get over it, which is one of the worst things you can tell them. Right? Third, that victims are innocent and victimizers are exploitative. There's no room for moral ambiguity. So, it doesn't matter what a woman does, how much she seemed to be consenting, whatever her behaviors were, she's always innocent, and all that's required to believe that is that she claims somebody raped her. The fourth one, both society and victims themselves fail to appreciate the extent of victimization, right? So this is the rape culture myth that we don't take it seriously and nobody thinks that it matters, and they don't have the proper compassion for victims of rape. Fifth, people must be taught to recognize their own and others' victimization. So we're putting on the feminist-colored eyeglasses so that we can look about us around the world and see everything as rapey. Sixth, claims of victimization must not be challenged because it's victim blaming. And this is partly what interferes with the court process, because any questioning of the victim in order to ascertain if a crime even happened is considered victim blaming and gets in the way of actually investigating crimes properly. And 7, the word victim connotes powerlessness. The term survivor is preferable. I think that's partly why they call these women victims in the court system, in order to, increase the sympathy as far as having the rules altered to suit their purpose. Because if you say victim, then everybody feels sorry for them, wants to rush to their side. But then as soon as they're through the process, then they become survivors, so that they can take power in their corruption that just took place in the court system. Anyways, that's the breakdown of the 7 ideas behind the feminist ideology and rape culture.
Thanks, Diana. If you're listening in and you have any experience with a false accusation, or if you have an opinion on anonymity during rape trials, please call in. The call-in number is 1-310-388-9709. That's 1-310-388-9709. Do call in. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear your opinions, your thoughts. We want to hear your stories if you want to share. And looks like we're looking to take some commercials now. So let's have those commercials.
One more thing, really quick.
Oh, go
Elaine?
ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It looks like Elaine, listener from James, are you there? Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to go ahead and put it out there. Elaine, listener from the Parsoness Foundation, will be joining us on AVFM News and Activism. We will be talking about the leaps and bounds that research into Vassal gel, a male reproductive control, has taken. This is a seminal show, no pun intended. We encourage all of our listeners to come hear what Elaine has to say about the direction that Vassal gel has taken. It's going to be very informative, and who knows, we might get lucky enough to hear a timeline of when Vassal gel is expected. All right, here's a few more.
Ow! He's on you! Alien feminist! You viper! You dragon! You evil monster!
Oh, hello everyone. Didn't see you there. Angry Harry here. Still fighting after all these years. So don't forget to visit angryharry.com to arm yourself with cognitive cluster bombs. Bombs with which to blow the wicked feminists to smithereens.
Join AVFM radio director James Huff and AVFM news director Robert O'Hara every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central for A Voice for Men News and Activism. This is the weekly radio show that brings you news from the front lines of the men's rights movement, along with interesting and important guests. Come and get your weekly dose of news and commentary about what's going on with the state of men and boys all over the world and what's being done about it. Listen every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. The time for waiting on the sidelines is over. The time to act is now.
Hey everybody, this is Aaron Clary, aka Captain Capitalism. Look, I got a great book out there for any student who's going to college or for any parent who has a kid going to college. The title of the book is called Worthless. It is the indispensable young person's guide to choosing the right major. You can find it on Amazon.com. It's in paperback, Kindle, and Audible, all for a lot less than what your kid is going to pay for tuition. That's Worthless. You can find it on Amazon.com.
I'd like to warn some women out there, if you're in college, it's dangerous out there, Jane. There's rapists all around. Most men are rapists, right? Any man could be a rapist. Is it 1 in 5 are raped? So it's risky. I think women out there should not go to college. It's dangerous. I mean, if 40 of you women are walking the campus at night, 10 of you will probably be assaulted. That's too high a risk. I wouldn't go to college. Go to an online college. This is Gary Costanza, and please check out my YouTube channel, Jerry the Other. That's Jerry the Other, Jerry the Other, no spaces. Bricks of logic may fly out. Take care.
Are you interested in men's rights activism? Do you live in the Sydney area or its surrounding suburbs? If so, please point your browsers to mensrightssydney.webs.com. That's mensrightssydney.webs.com. anonymity.com.
Come listen to A Voice for Men Radio, the voice of Europe.
The voice of Europe.
This show is probably the only one at this point addressing the issues concerning men and boys at a European level.
The voice of Europe.
Every Friday on 7 p.m. London time and 1 p.m. Central Time.
This is the place where feminism gets to be called out on its lies and propaganda, and the state is invited to get out of people's lives.
I am Lucian Bulsan, and this is the voice of Europe.
And we're back, but it looks like we're back without Typhon or Diana.
Oh, no, I'm here. I am here. I apologize. So we're back.
I have one thing to say.
Go ahead, Della.
All right, really quick, just because we have been talking about the number and scope of false allegations, I just wanted to point out that is not a statement on whether or not those impact the rightness or wrongness of facilitating them. Just because, even if there is only a tiny percentage, even if feminists were absolutely right, and even if there was only 2% of all allegations that were false, that would still not justify sacrificing those accused men to make it easier to convict. It still would not justify facilitating false accusations.
Well, I would say to that in a society that can do things like throw men's lives at a problem until the problem is beaten down, it's just sort of that male expendability thing. They just do not care that there are men who are suffering from this situation, from this system. In fact, a lot of people think that that's the way it should be, that men should suffer so that women have a better deal in life. And feminists refuse to acknowledge that particular attitude exists. So it's an unfortunate thing all around. And it's very unfortunate. And part of the problem really is that, like, feminists have this conception, male privilege, so it's almost justified. They can't even see the fact that our society is really built on male expendability. It's verboten to them. It's like blasphemy. But anyway, once again, the call-in number for our show, and the topic is anonymity in rape trials. The call-in number is 1-310-388-9709. That's 1-310-388-9709. If you have something to add to this, an opinion you have on the topic, or if you have an experience with a false rape accusation, or an experience specifically with a false rape accuser who used her anonymity to do even more damage, please do call in. And we want to hear from you. And that number again is 1-310-388-9709. And we're going to take a very important caller, Nicholas. He is the news director, I believe, for what is it? What is it, James? Could you come in and introduce Nicholas for us? James? Hello, Nicholas. Can you hear me?
I can. Greetings and salutations.
Yeah, hello. Why don't you introduce
you?
yourself? I'm doing well. Why don't you introduce your position?
Well, it was announced today in A Voice for Men circles that I have been appointed as the intake coordinator for the Judicial Accountability Committee for A Voice for Men, as well as legal analyst for A Voice for Men. So in those capacities, I will strive to do the best that I can to provide as much support and camaraderie and encouragement as I can to those who are facing false accusers.
No, thank you. And I have to apologize to Robert O'Hara. I was actually searching for an adjective to apply to news director, but I couldn't find one, and I realized that I had got completely the wrong title, and at that point I was screwed. But thankfully, but thankfully Nicholas knew. Of course he would.
I could not replace Robert O'Hara if I tried. He is a great man, and I respect him greatly.
Yep.
So I'm glad that we have been blessed with the presence of Robert O'Hara to be the news director for AVFM, because without him, I don't think we would be successful as we have been, especially with me personally, because he's done such a great job with pushing for press exposure for these issues. And I wanted to call in. I thought it was important, and I just want to say hello to Diana and Typhon and Della, to all of you. You guys are the revolutionary, and it's amazing to have people like you taking the red pill and presenting the facts and news and views with a red pill perspective, because it's just so reassuring and comforting that you guys exist, because without you, I don't think we would be in the forefront of the discussion. Now, for those of your listeners who are familiar with my case, I was accused by a woman who felt it necessary to make an excuse to get out of her class, or rather to get out of being late for her class, or to get out of being discovered that she kissed another man without her boyfriend knowing, and then subsequently her boyfriend found out. So there were quite a few variables. But Mary Grabinski, stood in the hallway, and she kissed me, and I kissed her, and for some reason, she transformed those facts into such a grave nature that I masturbated in a hallway. And to me, that's bizarre. But to an outsider, I'm sure it's even more bizarre. But the collateral consequences and the punitive consequences that have accompanied these allegations have been pretty wide-ranging, and those include, the issues with losing my status as a student at Harvard University, where I was an undergraduate degree candidate, losing, the ability to lead and direct my company, Nexus Government in Rhode Island, which had offices in Boston and D.C., and was able to push for reform of health, education, welfare, and foster care in Rhode Island and across the nation, as well as the New England area. And, there were just so many issues and consequences that surrounded this case. Now, Mary Grabinski, like I said, stood in that hallway, and she said that I kissed her, and I did. And she said that she kissed me. But apparently that wasn't good enough, because it exposed a need for her to essentially say, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're just, we're arguing over, whether or not she did shit that she is guilty of, and she made a false allegation, and it is mind-boggling to me as to why someone would make that allegation, lest they were trying to protect their reputation or protect themselves from getting in trouble with a professor, or protect themselves from getting in trouble with their parents for being home late or something of that sort, like that which happened in Rhode Island at the Community College of Rhode Island with the false rape allegation there. There were so many things that were quintessential to false accusers that we need to identify the patterns of Mary Grabinski and those like her. We need to identify the systemic introduction of false allegations as quote-unquote substantiated when they're really not. Substantiated criminal charges, because I guess I just want to say one last thing about this corroboration element. Most states require a corroboration element when charges are pressed for sexual assault and rape and things of that sort. And Mary Grabinski's corroborating evidence was that of a cop named Kenneth Quatman. And Kenneth Quatman basically said, hey, this guy admitted to it. I didn't admit to anything but kissing her. And I offered to author a written statement, but that was rejected. And so when you look at all of these facts and you circumscribe all of it, you begin to see that, these issues are systemic. This is what happens in courtrooms across America every single fucking day. And if we are going to sit back and relax and just let the judicial system run its course and hope it evolves. It's our fault. But we're not doing that. We are no longer going to be silent. We have an affirmation from Paul Elam that we are no longer going to be silent. I am not going to be silent. And as we come out and confront the systemic issues and systemic problems with false accusers making allegations that destroy people's lives, like mine, they are going to have to pay the price. So fuck anonymity. They are going to hear their names in the press. They are going to see their names at avoiceformen.com, and we will not be quiet until they are prosecuted themselves.
I think.
Okay,
Nick,
thank you.
I think in your
Thank
case,
you,
Nick, one of the compelling things to look at is the registry that's required for anybody convicted of a sex crime in any nature, and how that wasn't taken into consideration when the charges against you were being looked at as to whether or not you deserved a jury trial or not, right? And this registry aspect to all sex crimes is really, really upsetting to me, because it's no longer a case where you can be convicted of something, you serve time for your conviction, and then you're free to live your life again. This basically makes it so that you can not continue to live your life as a normal person anymore. And that
Absolutely.
seems to me contrary to the concept of justice and serving a penalty for a crime. It's cruel and unusual punishment.
No, you're exactly right. And the problem is that, when someone like me goes through being administratively withdrawn from Harvard University, losing the credibility in the political scene in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, D.C., New York City, everywhere else I've worked and lived, and losing everything. It's one thing for me to say, okay, this is wrong, let me confront the issue with sex offender registration, but it's a completely different thing to have someone who, has maybe worked at a convenience store or at Walmart or something like that, and then have them say, oh, hey, look, I can't even do anything about this. I'm just going to live on the registry and collect supplemental security income from the government for the rest of my life. That is not how things should be. So, if you're out there and you're sitting back and saying to yourselves, I can survive on the sex offender registry without, a worry, think again. Because what we are trying to do right now is expose those who make false allegations. There is hope. There is a consensus that if you come out, you will be helped. You will be assisted, not only by A Voice for Men, but thousands, hundreds of thousands of men's human rights activists across the world. This is the time to speak out and to help people understand the things that are confronting the destiny of your life. So men out there, I say to you, this is a clarion call. Come out. Say what you need to say. Identify your false accusers. Tear the shroud of anonymity from their faces and make their names known to the public so that they won't be affected by their false allegations as well.
I just want to take a brief moment because I don't know if everybody is familiar with your case, Nick. I just want to clarify. Nick's case was really atrocious. The accuser's case was really atrocious. This is an accusation for which there was zero evidence. There was an inconsistent story from the accuser. There was no corroboration from anyone who could be demonstrated as an honest person. The only corroborating evidence was offered by this officer who had a history of dishonesty within the department, and then the legal aid attorney did not represent Nicholas. Instead of arguing Nick's case, she argued consent. And since the accuser's story was not what happened, arguing that it was consensual was a completely false argument. But the local judge didn't allow him to fire his attorney and hire somebody who actually would represent him. And then he didn't get to testify on his own behalf, didn't get to call any witnesses. And so this is a complete, total, utter railroading.
And Della, not only is that correct, but I was denied a jury trial. So not only was I charged with 2 misdemeanors that were uncorroborated and unsubstantiated, but I was also deprived and denied the right to a jury trial and the right to cross-examine witnesses as well as the accuser, when in fact, if that had happened, there is a substantial chance that I would have been exonerated. So the quintessential element of American judicial theory is the right to a jury trial, and without that, we have no leg to stand on. So, if anyone out there is suffering the deprivation of a jury trial, make sure you demand it. Put it in writing, file it with the clerk of court, and file it with the judge. I can't emphasize it much more than that. But I need to help you understand that without a jury trial, there is a higher probability that you will be convicted of whatever offense you've been accused of, lest you demand your right to a jury trial and make sure that you are able to understand that without that, your chances of becoming exonerated are slim to none.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. We do need to move on. Or actually, Della, why don't you finish your thought if it's quick?
I'm going to say the other thing about this case is it really clearly demonstrates why it is important to name false accusers, because this is a situation where the local court environment supports accusers whether they are genuine or false. And this woman could very easily have gone on to do the same thing to another man and another man and another man. But with her name out there, if this happens again, if somebody comes along and searches her name, they'll at least have the opportunity to come back and say, well, look, she's done this before. And that's very important in the case of a false accuser, for the falsely accused to be able to say, look, this is a pattern.
Definitely. But we have to move on to another caller. Thank you, Nicholas, for coming on and telling your story and talking to us a bit about insisting on a jury trial and what happened to you when that didn't happen. I'm going to bring on John. John, are you on the floor, John? Are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello. And thanks for having me on the show.
You're welcome. So what is it you wanted to bring?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, first, a little bit about me. I am in the Army. I've been in the Army for about, 22 years this month. And, the first thing that I find very interesting, and some of the arguments that you hear from feminists, is that why they do not want to protect the anonymity of the accused is because they're saying, well, that is going to be able to have other people come forward. Now, to me, that sounds like basically making it into a witch trial, or even causing more people to come forward. I'm sorry, just to say that they're bandwagon jumping. And second, when I was in drill sergeant school, a bunch of us males going through to be drill sergeants, when we got our assignments where we were going to be at, all of us were hoping that we would not go to a mixed gender training unit because we were afraid of false accusations and what that would do to our career. And then, of course, we were told that our fears were basically unreasonable. It's like, okay, your fears, and your concerns don't matter.
Yeah, it's interesting, talking about fishing for other women to build a case against a guy. It reminded me of the Julian Assange case, which, could be a whole other barrel of fish to get into. But ultimately, like with him, you had one woman who heard another woman say something happened and took her down and created a joint case against somebody, basically piggybacking off this other woman's somewhat legitimate experience, right? But to quickly summarize what I got out of the way it went down was the woman who legitimately had a problem really just wanted to force Assange to get HIV tested. The other woman had a completely consensual encounter with him but was pissed off at him, so she decided to charge him with rape and piggybacked off this other one. And, that's one of the problems when you put somebody's name out there and then ask for other women to come forward. You could be asking anybody who's ever had a negative experience, like he didn't call me the next day, right? And they'd be like, yeah, I think I could call that rape. But that same argument is just as good a reason to have the accuser's name published, so that, like has been mentioned before, if other men have found themselves being either directly accused falsely of rape by this woman, or having been, through the rumor mill accused of rape, they can get together as well, and they can try and even out the scales of who are we dealing with, who's the accuser and who's the accused. And to me, that just shows that you should have no anonymity for both, right?
Well, yeah, and it becomes mob justice, and that's something I really don't want to see, in the country that I spent 22 years defending, because I've been to other countries where I've seen mob justice, and it's not pretty.
That's another aspect of it. This is something that I've been thinking about for a while with respect to anonymity for the accuser, but no anonymity for the accused. And a lot of the feminist arguments against anonymity for the accused actually capitalize on the stigma of being accused. And with that, it looks to me like they're actually trying to encourage that mob mentality and that vigilante violence. They're using proxy violence to do their jobs.
And then having people fearing speaking out against that, and and then the shame that comes associated with that, and it's just disgusting. I mean, and also one final thought is that and again, I may be really hated for saying this, especially by feminists, but that a rape victim can recover with time, with help, with treatment and time. But somebody who has been falsely accused of rape, they can never recover. It's impossible. It'll affect their job. It'll affect their job prospects. It'll affect their relationships. They will stop trusting people. And to me, that's the most terrible thing.
Well, yeah. I agree with that assessment. I think, though, that in talking about legal anonymity in the court system, that's not going to resolve the problem of this ganging up effect in the public court, right? That's something that feminists have stacked the deck on by creating this idea of rape myths and telling people that they're morally guilty of some crime if they don't automatically assume guilt, right? And that's a battle that they're fighting in the public court. And if we can counteract that, if we can balance out the public opinion court to remind people that somebody's not guilty until they've been convicted of a crime, that's the only way to stop that sort of vigilante justice that takes place. You don't stop it by putting anonymity into the court system because, like you said, we can announce to our friends and family, and we can put things on the internet that aren't controlled by the court system to put people's names out in public and to accuse them and slander them, right? The only way to interfere with that, and that's the thing that's causing all the stigma on both sides, is to actually get the public to start thinking in a proper legal way, right? To get them to back off of the vigilante, explain to them that's why we have court systems and why they need to value the court systems and promote them.
Yeah, and that the court systems should not be subject to emotionally charged rhetoric. Also, it should be about the facts, what you can prove, regarding hard evidence. And of course, you also hear from feminists saying that, well, you don't get much evidence if there's rape. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I mean, that's why they invented rape kits. But yeah, I mean, the whole problem is that they want to have that fear, because when they have that fear, suddenly they get to be in control of the public opinion, and they're hoping by that they will be able to influence how a jury thinks. If they control the narrative, they control how people think, and that's why typically down in women's centers you'll see them perpetuate this myth about rape culture. And when that's in people's minds, they hear of somebody who's being accused, what do they automatically think? Well, this guy's guilty because a woman would never lie, right? So.
Yeah, and one of the other things that is problematic with the vigilante justice that feminists are actually making worse is because when they promote the idea that women won't get justice through the justice system, they promote vigilante justice because people will say to themselves, well, she'll never get what She'll never see justice if she tells the cops and she goes through the court system. The only way she'll see justice is if we pick up a tire iron and enact justice for ourselves. So feminists actually encourage mob violence.
It's because that they're not getting the result that they want, or the result that they feel that they are entitled to. And that was something I saw in the Marysville's case. Everybody calling upon, Anonymous and also a couple of other feminist groups calling on people to go down to a Marysville in order to picket. And I was thinking to myself, well, how are those people going to feel if it's not going to be the result that they feel should be?
Yeah, definitely. You might be looking at some sort of riot. Situation. It's a really unfortunate situation, and as Diana said, we really need to look more into dealing with the court of public opinion and making sure that not just everybody understands that we need to take a step back from these situations. Even I think that this is even more needed with men being accused of rape, because I have never heard of a woman who was an alleged rape victim being beaten to death because she was an alleged rape victim. Never heard of that. And yet you hear about this a lot with men who are presumptively innocent but accused of rape. So it's a quandary, and we are obviously not going about it in a way that's fair. Certainly not when feminists are encouraging this mob mentality and this attitude of being out for blood because the system isn't going to serve justice. But thank you for your call, John.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Please, yeah, you're welcome. Please call in again if you feel like you have anything to contribute to the show. We really appreciate all our callers. And we're going to move now to Andrew Stein.
Oh, hi.
Hello, Andrew Stein.
Hi, is this me? Oh, hi. Yes, I happen to be one of these Brony callers. I'm a Brony musician.
Yeah.
But I refuse to use my actual screen name. But I'd like to talk about, because there's a lot of controversy going on with feminism in the Brony community. And there's a big trend I've noticed with a lot of these Tumblr feminists, in which I don't think they actually like the source material of what they're actually fighting against. We have a big problem right now with one girl trying to take down various Tumblrs and trying to take down various pornographic parodies. And I would sort of agree with her opinion if every other post on her blog was not just her saying, I hate Brodies, Brodies are cancer, Brodies make me sick, I'm blaming everything wrong in the world on Brodies. I just don't think that, I think there's some other agenda here besides perhaps trying to say that there's some misogyny. I think there's some other kind of agenda here. I'm beginning to think with some of these people, this is just... Excuse me?
Okay, that's unfortunately, Andrew, we really appreciate your opinion, but this is sort of the wrong show for it. But thank you again for calling in, and if we do have another show on Bronies, please call in then. Unfortunately, we do have to keep the topic, so I am going to take another caller. Father's Time. Father's Time, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you pretty good. Hey, guys, first-time caller, long-time listener. The weekly artwork and animation is nothing short of awesome. I mean, you guys are doing a great job, and congratulations on your new website.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
The artwork is done by Europa Phoenix, and the animation is done by Phil. If you want to see more of their work, please go to our website, www.honeybadger.brigade.com, and click on About, and you can get some links to their pages. Cool. Sorry to interrupt you on that, but go ahead.
No, okay. So here's my question. Now, to remind people of this injustice and to create awareness, how do you talk to a woman attempting an open, non-threatening dialogue who has been raped or almost raped about the injustice of falsely accusing a man of rape?
How to talk to a woman about the injustice of falsely accusing a man of rape? Well,
yeah, but
always...
if she was almost raped, or if she had been raped before, because I know that that's a sensitive nature, to a woman. It's a very sensitive topic. So, how would you address something like that? How do you talk to her about the injustice of falsely accusing a man of rape?
What I would do is I would first talk about the kind of effects that being falsely accused has on a man, because a lot of the effects are identical to what happens when a woman or a man or a child is raped. There's the same sort of constellation of emotional and physical problems. Physical problems manifest, like emotional problems manifested physically. For example, men who've suffered false accusations have trust issues. They have problems with their sexuality. Oftentimes they have a lot of problems having sex. They even have impotence as a result of being falsely accused. They have depression and anxiety symptoms. They have problems going out. They have problems being alone with women. And you can recognize all of these symptoms because these are the same symptoms that rape victims have. They're a very, very similar set of symptoms. So if you want to introduce the topic gently to a rape victim, you might start by just telling them a bit about what the effect of a false rape accusation is on men, and how the effect is very similar to what happens with rape victims. So when you understand that these two, and the reality is that these two crimes, they're both crimes, are very similar. Like in a lot of ways, their effects, their ultimate psychological effects, are very similar. Like post-traumatic stress syndrome and other psychological problems are very similar. And in fact, I think that they should be treated as being in the same general area of problems because the effects are so similar. I think personally that false rape accusations are themselves a form of sexual abuse. Does that help?
Oh, absolutely. Great job. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Great job on the show. I'll get off the line so you guys can take more callers. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling in.
All right, take care.
It's you too.
I think you don't even have to have been falsely accused of a crime to be feeling that sort of a stress. Pretty sure this is what's referred to as the gun in the rim, right? I think that when you're entering into an intimate relationship with somebody, or you're feeling like you want to take a relationship another step further, well, the important thing is developing trust. And nowadays, trust on the side of men towards women is much more problematic than trust of women towards men, in my mind, because women do hold this gun, and that's something that women should be made aware of, that as much as they want to go on about their own personal traumas and their own past, that interferes with them emotionally or physically in some way in entering a relationship, that men should feel just as justified to explain this gun in the rim and to say, well, I really like you, but the problem is this. My side of the relationship is very problematic because at any point, if you decide that you don't like something I've done, I can find myself in court, and that creates a trust issue for me. And if a woman can't accept that, they can't just have that discussion with you, then it's probably not somebody that you want to be alone with.
Definitely. It's definitely someone you don't want to be alone with. And it'd be nice if men had more leeway to talk about these issues. They really don't. In fact, if you've ever read the stories about, for example, war rape or prison rape, there's a consistent theme in them. When guys talk about their experiences of having been sexually abused, and I'm sure being falsely accused is even worse because there's the stigma of, oh, did he really do it? That's always hanging over your head. But when they talk about this stuff, there's often a really, really negative response to that vulnerability from the women that they trust. If you look at it, I remember reading about men who were raped in the Congo, and women would just leave them. They would leave their husbands because they had been raped, because they couldn't be their husbands anymore. They couldn't be that strong protector, provider anymore. And the same thing happened with guys who disclose prison rape to their partners. And the same thing happens when it's false rape accusations. If a guy has a problem, women just don't seem equipped to deal with it in many cases, and it's sort of sad and really unfortunate.
There's another aspect of the discussion on false allegations when you're trying to explain to a rape victim or anybody, because really explaining something to a rape victim isn't really all that different than explaining it to anybody else. And it's not in general rape victims, but feminists who really have this thing about supporting railroading false accusers as if that helps rape victims. But the thing that helps to explain it to other people is to compare it to other forms of false accusation. And one of the few things that's comparable to being falsely accused of a sex crime is to falsely accuse someone of a racist incident or being racist. And that's one where you can turn to the person and say, well, what if somebody spread around town that you committed an act against another person specifically because of the color of their skin? What would that put you through? And how would people treat you over that? How would you expect people to look at you differently? And how would you expect people to respond to you because of that? And just imagine if you could go to jail for it. Just imagine if you had to register for a program that was going to announce to your neighbors that you were accused of being a racist. It would be humiliating, and it would be horrifying, because you would have this somebody thinks I did something awful hanging over your head. And so that might be a way that you can help people to sort of understand the horror of being accused of a sex crime by, even if they can't imagine, because women aren't necessarily subject to being falsely accused of sex crimes on the level that men are, it can help to get them to understand a little bit more what it's like to be subject to that.
Yeah, it can help to create a way, an avenue or a bridge to sort of start to relate to their experience to what men go for with false rape accusations. And again, like you were saying, that you can't really capture that feeling that I've heard men say that, it feels like all of society is against you, that you've been sort of ejected out of society. And it's a difficult situation all around, and we really need, I think, in terms of balancing the needs of rapists, or sorry, not rapists. We don't want to balance the needs of rapists. Balancing the needs of women, men, and children who have been raped, and balancing the needs of people who have been accused of rape. We need a much more nuanced approach than what we have currently. What we have currently is a sledgehammer approach, and and until we get the feminist stranglehold, we manage to just loosen it a bit. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a sledgehammer of man bad, woman good. Anyway, I'm going to bring on another caller. This topic is a bit of a bummer, but Clifford, are you there?
Yes.
Great.
I had actually, when I saw the YouTube video for this, I was thinking, this is very relevant to something that just happened at my old college. Because a while back, my senior year, there was an accusation of rape, and one of the big controversies about it was that the guy who was accused, not only was he not, his anonymity wasn't kept, there was a big mugshot of him in the school newspaper, and many of his friends and many other people were very sort of outraged by this, because it's like, you shouldn't be, because the whole idea was that not only was he not named, not only was his anonymity not held, but adding that photo sort of puts an implicit idea of guilt in there, because like the article is very short, but a picture's worth 1,000 words, that old cliche. But the weird thing was, when people were expressing outrage to this, a lot of people in response were saying, why are people so mad about the paper doing its job and reporting the news when we should be talking about this girl who is getting no sympathy? And basically there was sort of a call to sort of garner sympathy for this anonymous individual that no one necessarily knows except her circle of friends. And then later this year, the man who was accused, he was acquitted, and he's now filing a lawsuit against the college, his accuser, and one of the sexual misconduct advisors, because the sexual misconduct advisor advised the accuser to destroy evidence that was relevant to the case, and the accuser and the sexual misconduct advisor still remain anonymous. So it just seems to be this really weird double standard that even when anonymity is given to accusers, that's still not good enough, because you need to garner sympathy for the accusers even if evidence hasn't shown that their claims are true or not. It just seems all very weird and bizarre.
I remember reading that question in regards to some other trial. I can't remember which one specifically, but at the end of it, when people were showing compassion for the accused and stuff, the question was like, why isn't anybody, feeling sorry for the victim, right? It's like, well, because nobody knows her fucking name, right? Like, how are we supposed to, give out well wishes or try and be concerned for them or to take care of them in any way when nobody's allowed to know who they are, right? I think it was actually connected to a James Taranto article where he was talking about a military rape trial or something like that. I don't know, but you see that all the time where people are talking about concerns for a man involved in some sort of an accusation, and it always comes down to, well, but what about the woman? And there's like, we don't even fucking know her. Like, nobody's allowed to know her. We're not allowed to talk about her. Even if you know her name, you can't say who she is in order to generate sympathy for her. So, potentially you could argue for feminists that it's better to not have anonymity for the accuser so that she can get more compassion.
Yeah, and
right?
I was really disturbed by the anonymity of the sexual misconduct advisor that's advising people to destroy evidence relevant to the case. That just really bothered me. Or at least those are the accusations the man who was accused is making, that under guidance of the sexual misconduct advisor, the accuser got rid of evidence that would have been relevant to the case. But he was acquitted anyway, so that's good news, but you still have the repercussions of the accusation. He had to leave school, and that is essentially what the lawsuit's for, tuition and not being able to graduate on time and thus garnered wages from potentially being able to get a job. So I guess there's a little silver lining there. Hello?
Sorry. Yeah, definitely. Actually, I'm going to call on Della. Della, you were wanting to talk, so please feel free.
Well, yeah, I had been going to ask when you were talking about the counselor having anonymity. That was following the student's acquittal, right? And I think you clarified that. But that was following the student's acquittal, and then when the student filed a lawsuit and named the counselor and the girl in the lawsuit, they were still given anonymity.
Well, they were given I'm not sure if they were. I doubt they were given legal anonymity. But in the paper, the same paper that posted the original accusation of rape and the posting of the lawsuit, there were no names given except, of course, the name of the man accused of rape, because it was already given. So it just seems that in sort of the public opinion, there's this bias of who gets anonymity and who doesn't.
Yeah, this is one of those things, one of those examples that needs to be brought up when feminists talk about a rape culture, a culture of tolerance for rape. Because here you have a situation where the case was proved false. The student who was accused was acquitted, and yet the paper still kept its sympathies with the accuser, even when the case they were covering was a case of manipulating evidence to get a false result in court. So it's not just a situation where this campus and this particular newspaper had sympathy for the accuser, and people were demanding that there was sympathy for the accuser. They had sympathy for the accuser even after they knew the accusation was false.
Yeah, it's really messed up.
And it's definitely not rape culture.
Yeah, it's all about feelings, as I feel that everyone's against me even when the evidence points they're not, and even when they're doing things to try and be the opposite of this rape culture, we're still going to complain that, because we're doing things to protect anonymity of the accuser or the possible rape victim, it's still not good enough, because in that we're not garnering enough sympathy from the greater population. It's this double talk. It's wanting to have your cake and eat it too, and it's a lot of stuff.
See, I think playing around with anonymity really just turns the charge of rape into a game, and it's not a game. Granting anonymity to anybody reduces the seriousness of what's involved here. Like, when you charge somebody with a sexual crime, it's, and even like something that might have been considered a misdemeanor before is not any longer a misdemeanor thanks to feminists. You're talking about something where you're going to remove somebody's liberties, and playing around with anonymity just takes away from the seriousness of that. And what we need to have is a situation where if somebody's willing to, they believe they've been done so wrong that they're willing to charge somebody with the crime, they need to be able to sit in front of that person, look them in the eye, and make their accusation without anonymity. Because if you can't do that, then it's not serious enough. If it's serious enough, then they have counselors who can support them, who can get them prepared for it. And if they're not ready to do that, they're not ready to charge somebody with the crime. That's the way I see it.
I also had another question, but if you all need to take another call, I totally understand.
No, go ahead.
Quick question.
On the idea of sort of vigilante justice, when you all were talking about that in some of the previous calls, I was thinking of are you all familiar with the Steubenville rape case that occurred in Ohio? That's actually where, not Steubenville, but the college I went to was in Ohio, but that's not particularly relevant.
Yeah.
That example of sort of vigilante justice, my biggest issue with that was when Anonymous came in and sort of blew the whole lid on that case, and everyone started getting upset that a lot of the people within the community were upset at the girl. My biggest thing was Anonymous really didn't have a right to put that girl in the situation that they did. It was this idea, we're getting her justice, and really they were doing more harm to her than good, because now she's in she might not have even said anything, not because she didn't feel like she could tell anyone, but she might have herself thought, well, what happened to me was really terrible, but I know it'll be better for me to just not talk about it because of the situation I'm in the particular context. And it just seemed really weird that you sort of turn these people into heroes, even though I wouldn't say they're bad. I would just say what they did was reckless. And I guess I wanted you all's opinion on that.
I would say that, first of all, I read an account that suggested that the justice system was actually working in that case, and Anonymous really didn't do anything. That justice was, there are going to be asshats who accuse people who have been raped. I mean, I've experienced that of ruining their fun, and people don't like victims. Period. They don't want to have to feel sympathy, so they'll just deny that you were a victim of what they don't want to have to feel sympathy for. But at the other hand, I've heard that the justice system was actually doing the right thing in that case. I mean, there have been other cases that are similar where Anonymous has gotten involved, and again, the justice system actually did the right thing, and the outrage addicts just got into it and blew it into this huge mess. And again, I don't think vigilantes help anything. And as you were saying, it probably generated a lot of anger towards the accused girl simply because Anonymous was going crazy. And that doesn't help either. I think that cool heads should prevail, and a nuanced approach should be what we aim for. And that would do a lot more good than what we have now with this sledgehammer approach.
I think there's a danger with groups like Anonymous where they can get amazing results and do something really, really great in one instance, but they can also do an incredible harm in another. And the whole concept or the power given to anonymous groups, like Anonymous, is something that we're still discovering. It's going to take us a little bit to understand how it works and to figure out how to use it or how to limit it, or whether or not we can limit it. There's a really interesting TED Talk given by the guy who started 4chan, who's talking about, yes, okay, there's all the bad effects of an anonymity online, but there's also good things they've done. We have to take into account both sides of it. And vigilante justice is definitely, it's just a polite term for a lynch mob, right? And that's at this point, when Anonymous is involving themselves in the criminal system and in matters of justice, they're basically taking on the role of a lynch mob, so it is quite dangerous.
From what I read about the case, it really didn't look like the system was not responding prior to Anonymous' involvement. What it looked like was that the community was not responding the way feminists like the community respond to an accusation before Anonymous got involved. Like Allison said, the system was working. What I see as the result of Anonymous' actions is twofold. First of all, the case has now become an international case, and not an international case as in international court, but it's known internationally. And so if the victim ever gets made known, if her name ever comes out, that's going to be international as well. And if there is, as feminists claim, this horrible stigma attached to being a victim, she's going to face that internationally. And then at the same time, you have the two boys, and this goes into my objection to the way the system handles sex crimes with respect to their recovery programs for sex criminals that are therapeutic, that are supposed to teach sex criminals to not commit their crimes, and the registry. Because what you have here is a lot of these guys are put through these programs that are supposed to teach them or mold them into people who are not going to commit those crimes. But then when they get done, they get smacked on that registry anyway. And so for the next X number of years, they are still labeled sex criminals. So when these guys, if they've served their time and they go through this program and they've supposedly recovered and they're supposed to now be better about this and they're supposed to know what they did wrong and have learned to not do this, now when they come out of there, they are internationally known. If they truly come out of there and they've recovered and they're not future sex criminals coming out of there, they have no way to go anywhere and be the kind of contributing members to society that they could be. Instead, wherever they go, there's going to be a bit of a drag on society from them instead, because they're not going to be accepted back into society. Instead, they're always going to be treated like yesterday. There's no tomorrow for these guys. So between the two situations, what Anonymous really did with this, and I hate to disparage Anonymous because they have gone through and done some great things, but in this situation, they were really wrong. They've really destroyed tomorrow for both parties.
And thank you, Clifford, for calling in. We're going to go now to Nick. Nick, our very own patriarchy party head. Hello, our patriarchal overlord. What do you have to tell us today?
How's it going, Allison?
Hi.
And Diana and Della. I just wanted to comment on an overall culture of anonymity. They talk about rape culture, but there's a culture of anonymity, and it's not just limited to what goes on in trials. What got me involved in all this is that I saw a guy who was living with a bunch of male feminists, and what happened was he made out with one of their girlfriends. And so the guy, in his butthurt, he decided to go and tell all the other guys in the community that my friend had gotten his girlfriend drunk and taken advantage of her, because that's a lot more comfortable than believing that your girlfriend just cheated on you. And nobody. So not only does the alleged victim not have to step forward and make a claim, but the person who made the claim is also pretty much anonymous too. Who made the accusation really just gets thrown down the memory hole, and all that matters is that a person got accused, and people don't care about the evidence. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it has to be said again, is that people don't. What you've got is a culture of anonymity. When we were at the slut walk, and I had my signs, a girl stepped out from the crowd, and she called us cowards, and we were being called cowards apparently because we didn't show our faces, even though we were right there, out in public, everyone. She goes, "Edmonton's cowards," and she snaps a photo, and then she runs back to the safety of the anonymity of the crowd. And, this speaks directly to the psychology of the people that we're dealing with. They want to be lions and they want to be heroes, but at the same time, they don't want to have any accountability, and that's the risk you have to take if you want to, normally if you want to get that kind of notoriety, right? But they don't have to do that. They get to have the best of both worlds, I guess.
Well, this goes back to the principle that justice not only needs to be done, but it needs to be seen to be done, and the importance of when you're dealing with crimes and criminal matters, that it's being done in the name of the public, and the public has a right to know who they're supposed to be defending. And so it's important for us to know who's using our name to fight their battles in a court system where the state is charging somebody with a crime on their behalf. I want to know on whose behalf. I want to know who it is I'm supposed to be defending.
Yep.
Just so people know, Nick is the resident stunt monkey for Men's Rights Edmonton, and you can follow him at mensrightsedmonton.com and see all of their various antics, which include going to slut walks and putting up really inoffensive signs, truly inoffensive signs about how they love sluts. Anyway, continue, Nick.
Well, I really don't have much more to say about that, except the same guy one thing that I want to talk that I want people in our movement to talk about more is that the accusation of sexual misconduct can be levied by a man and taken just as seriously as long as it's against another man for the crime of harming a woman. It's an accusation that can be flung by absolutely anybody, not just women. And to speak more to that, my friend, he tends to fool around with other people's girlfriends a lot. But after I put up the posters about, we put up those "Don't Be That Girl" posters, and one of them said, just because you regret it later doesn't mean you didn't have consent. And he goes, it's funny that you put up those posters because that happened to me again. And again, it was the girl's boyfriend who was pushing her to charge him with rape, even though she, engaged. She was a very willing participant in what they did. It's just because the guy, the guy didn't want to be, he didn't want to be a cuckold, and so it's something that you can. It's an accusation anybody can fling with zero accountability. So,
that is a really good point. That is a really good point, and it is also a good point. You mentioned a guy can get away with making an accusation, remaining anonymous, or making a false accusation and being believed if he's accusing another man. As soon as a man who has been raped speaks up about his experience and the woman, the perpetrator is a woman, that changes entirely. And all of a sudden, he's not thought of as a victim. He's thought of as a whiner. he's accused of not having whatever sexuality he has, if he actually is gay and he didn't want the sex because he's gay, somehow being gay becomes a bad thing even though it wasn't before. So as soon as a guy suffers a heterosexual rape, it is a totally different story. The support totally disappears. But the thing I was going to say earlier, and this is something that sort of goes back to a lot of the discussion that we've been having tonight. We've been talking a little bit about justice here and there, and I wanted to clarify, and this is something that I had a point that I made talking in front of the courthouse in the Dayton, Ohio area when Nick went and filed his recent case, is getting a conviction is not justice, and getting an acquittal is not justice. Neither of those are justice. Justice is achieved by completing a quest for the truth and then acting in response to what is found, and acting reasonably and responsibly. It's not one side winning or the other, but finding out what happened and taking action based on that.
Definitely. And thank you, Nick, for calling in. We are pretty close to the end of the show now. There's just one caller left. One caller who I slightly hesitate to take, but we shall take him anyway. Richard Stallman. Hello, Richard.
Hi. So on the topic of anonymity and this just pretty much what was I going to say? Like just messing up your whole argument about rape and making it less serious. There's some interesting stuff always going on Tumblr. Some ridiculous stuff here. Like there's this one person who just keeps making up these new arguments, and like every month she tries to start it back up again, which is pure. She's just doing it for controversy. It's not okay. It's ridiculous.
Okay, what are the arguments that she's making? First of all, we're not trying to minimize rape. We're trying to balance the needs of rape victims with accusers.
Of course not. It's serious, but she's making it less serious by. So there's it's.
Well, let's specify here. Who
she
is
looks
this
for
person?
videos. Go ahead.
Who is the person that you're referring to? Because there are a lot of people on Tumblr.
Yeah, her name is Pinky Pony, and she just the stuff she does. Like she began it with this whole argument against this thing that she claimed was it's literally this Ask Molestia thing, and it's some pony thing, and basically what it is supposed to be molestation. It's supposed to hint at that, and there's really no rape involved. It's just supposed to be somewhat.
That's really unfortunate. Maybe Molestia can bring in some yaoi fangirls, and if people don't know, yaoi is basically man on boy rape. Fangirls, and they can get some rape started with that. Anyway, that's really off topic for the show. Strange fan fiction and ponies and stuff like that. That's pretty off topic. So we're going to have to close shop, unfortunately. Yep, it's that time of night, and we can't do this forever. So I am going to thank the people that need to be thanked. First of all, thank you to A Voice for Men for hosting our voice as women, for women who don't hate men. Actually, wait a second. Oh, my co-hosts are yelling. Okay, let's do the final roundup. Diana, do you have some final thoughts before we close the show completely?
Well, first of all, to that last caller, I think there's like a different sort of a courtroom in which cases like Pinky Pony are handled, and that would be the forum and the court of 4chan. So go get her. As far as the actual topic goes of the show, of the three main positions on anonymity, being that only the accuser should have it, that both the accuser and the accused should have it, or that neither one should have it, I'm pretty cool with the last two. The only one I find insupportable is that only the accuser should have anonymity, because I believe in equality before the law, and I refuse to accept the feminist doctrine that I am weaker than men and that I can't enter a courtroom on the same level as men. So I want them to stop, taking away my personal power and telling other people that I don't have it. And I would like to see either an equality of anonymity granted, but I think the better solution is to take it away from both, so that it's an open, fair trial on both parties, and that as much as naming the man can help bring other victims of that man forward, naming the woman can help bring victims of that woman forward to help the man in his defense as well. I think that would be the far better solution.
Yes, it would be the far better solution. I actually came into this argument disagreeing with Diana on the issue of anonymity, because I felt that if we grant anonymity, it would actually be more legitimate to grant anonymity to male, the presumptively innocent men accused of rape, versus anonymity to their rape accusers. But of course, when she made her argument that the examples that I did in the beginning of the show referred to men who were tried and convicted in the court of public opinion, not even in the courts, I had to actually reconsider my opinion. So thank you to Diana for bringing that up and giving me this new information to reconsider my opinion and my point of view. And I'm going to go now to Della. Della, did you have anything else to close out the show with?
It is a really good point that it hasn't exactly been articulated this way, but anonymity for the accused isn't really going to be enforceable, in that the public is going to be more willing to violate it because of the same stigma that would be the reason to want anonymity for the accused. And that would create a serious problem with maintaining it. So as far as my opinion on this, I would have to say no anonymity as well. Personally, when it comes to a case like this, I think feminists have done a terrible disservice to the general public, to women, to victims, who they seem to think are the same two groups as one group, women and victims, but as well as to falsely accused men and to male victims. They've really created a situation where we can never be sure if a convicted criminal is really a criminal in the case of sex crimes, because they've kept evidence from being submitted into court. They've altered the entire court system so that you have to prove innocence instead of proving guilt, and they've protected false accusers instead of protecting the actual victim. So this situation with our courts and with our way of handling sex crime accusations really is more dysfunctional than the system was prior to feminist involvement. And I think we should go back to a situation where we are allowing all of the evidence to be submitted and expecting the attorneys to argue whether or not this evidence is worth anything. And that would include naming the accuser and naming the accused.
Yep. Just keep the process of justice clear and transparent instead of trying to hide things. That's definitely a good way to go. And with that, it's that time again, and this is not a false start to the end of the show. This is the actual end of the show. And I want to give thanks to everyone and every organization that made this possible. First of all, thanks to A Voice for Men for hosting our voice. Thanks to our listeners who take the time out of their, no doubt, busy schedules to come and listen to us. And for our callers who call in and give us their opinions. They're always welcome. Even the ones who have opinions on certain entities in the pony fandom. That's always fun. Give a little texture to the show. Don't forget to check out our store at cafepress.com/honeybadgerbrigade. Thanks to my co-hosts for making it a very interesting show. Thanks to Phil for animating our ad every week, to Europa for his amazing art, and to James for keeping everything running smoothly. And thanks to 4chan for trolling us once again. Yes, we noticed, and we appreciate it every time you do.
Yeah, and we're still
it's always
waiting
a
for
blast.
that My Little Pony porn of us.
Yeah, where is our frickin' My Little Pony porn? It's been a week, right? How long does it take you to draw this stuff? Tune in next week. Same Badger time, same Badger station. Good night.
This is Honey Badger Radio, reminding you to take the red pill.